have a really good understanding of slope, the chapter is impossible. If you have a real good understanding of slope, the chapter gets pretty easy. And the thing that surprised me, well, we didn't have school yesterday. So because we didn't have school for two days, kind of like a weekend, maybe that contributed to the poor grades on the quiz. But it's very doable. And unfortunately, it just wasn't happening. So we're going to go back over it again. And hopefully, by the end of this period, when I give you the quizzes tomorrow, you'll say to yourself, man, that was easy. I did really, really well. So hopefully that's the position that we'll be in. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to go over each of the 4 quiz questions first, and then we will get to today's lesson, okay? What we really need to know at the end of this quiz is 2 things. First off, what's a positive slope, what's a negative slope? Actually, 3 things. Second thing is to make sure we always put the y's in the top or the vertical movement in the top. And the last thing is how to count the slope. If I can do all 3 of those things, plus plot points, which you should know from last year, then this work should be very, very, very simple. Now, I think side 1 was easier than side 2. The reason I think side 1 was easier is because I put the points on side 1 for you. On side 2, I didn't put the points for you. So I wanted to see on side 2 if you were able to find the points. And if you couldn't, then that would explain a lot, and hopefully we could get that down pat. Ethan, did you have a question? No? Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the first line that we have on your quiz. And, you know, I want a lot of people to keep in mind, too, that we have a kind of like a fresh start in terms of material, because slope has very little to do with what we've been doing so far this year. You don't find a lot of exponents or scientific notation with slope. Now, I want to do the slope of this line going from this point here to this point here. My first question is, if you were to walk from left to right, good job, Rach. If we were to walk from left to right, like we were walking up or down a hill, would I be walking uphill or downhill with this slope? Downhill. The minute I'm walking downhill, it's always negative. We read slopes like we read a book, left to right, left to right. Okay. So first thing I know is that my slope is negative. Now I just have to fill in what goes in the top and what goes in the bottom. A lot of people in the class put them upside down. A lot of people did that. Now, the first thing, and you know, it's almost natural to put the X's on the top because your whole life, what comes first, X or Y? X. No, X always comes first. In fact, right, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, blah, 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 X, Y, Z. So we've always had X go first. In coordinates, the X goes first, X comma Y. But all of a sudden, they're showing you a slope and they're saying that they want the Y to go first. So that's a little weird. It's brand new and we have to be aware of it and make sure we keep it down pat. Now, I'm going down. To get from this point to this point, how many am I going to go down? Everybody? How many am I going to go down? To go from here to here? 1, right? 1. Then over how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's negative because it's going downhill, and the vertical change is 1, and the horizontal change is 4. So the answer is negative 1/4. That's all you needed to do on the first question. Now the second question looks like this. Now I need to do the change again. So when we do a slope, it's always written like a fraction, okay? Now the question is, what over what? Well, if I go from this point to this point, what is that vertical change? Remember, the y's go first in the slope formula. It's up and down first. How much did I change up and down to go from here to here? 2. 1, 2. And then I went over how many? 1. So the answer is 2 over 1. So that's the second one. Yes, Rich?
Would you combine the 1 and 3 and the 4 and the 2 for the...
You're on the back, all right? On the back, now we got to do a whole different deal, all right? But are we all okay on the front? Does anybody have any more questions on the front? How many people think they're gonna get 100 on the front part of the quiz tomorrow? Just the front part. All right, I think it's pretty easy. Just count with your pen, like this. Ready? Up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. The slope is 2 over 1. Done. Okay, so now, on the front page, those questions, I wanted to evaluate if I drew the line, could you figure out the slope? That was what the whole first page was about. The second page is about not only can you figure out the slope, but can you draw the line? And that means can you plot points? And the answer is most kids seem to plot the points well, but not everybody. So I want to show you how the graph should work. Now, somebody, I think you, put the negatives on the wrong side. Was it you? 0 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who's I? Rich, you did it. Okay. -1, -2, -3. Rachel, all it is, Rach, it's a number line. That's all it is, okay? So just draw a number line. And then the positives go up on this one. And I'm actually gonna have to do this with 2 separate colors because I'm not gonna wanna eliminate, the numbers on the graph. So it says, what's the slope of the line containing? And I'll do this one in red. -2, 3. And what does that say, 1, 5? Does that say 1, 5? Yeah. Okay. So first, let's plot the points. Now remember, any coordinate, the only thing that has the y first, Caitlin, pick your head up. The only thing that has the y first is the slope formula. Everything else is always x comma y. So I'm going to go where x is -2 and y is 3 and see where they meet, okay? So where x is -2 and y is 3, they meet right here. So that's my point, -2, 3. Take a look on your quiz now and see if you marked that point correctly, -2, 3. Okay? If you didn't, then we need to straighten out how you plot coordinates. Remember, the horizontal here is just a number line. This is also a number line, but we put the positives in the top and the negatives in the bottom. So we kind of spin the number line like this, rotate it, and then we have it that way. Where is x, God bless, where is x -2? All along here. X is -2. Where is y 3? All along here. Where do they meet? Right there. Okay? Next, I got to plot the point 1, 5. Now here's where x is 1, and here's where y is 5. So my line goes right through those 2 points. And now the question becomes, how do I move? Remember, we use an M for slope because it's all about movement. How do I move from the first dot to the second dot? Now, my first question to you is this a positive or a negative slope? Positive. We're going up, okay? Now, up how many, over how many? Up 1, 2, over 1, 2, 3. So my slope is 2/3. So the harder part of this question on the quiz is to plot the points. If you can plot the points, then after that, it's exactly the same as the front side of the quiz. Questions? Preguntas? Yes?
How did I get it wrong though? I got rise over run and I did the same exact thing.
Did you count the boxes right?
Yeah, I have it
Did you
right
get 2
here.
over 3?
Yeah,
Where?
right here.
Oh, because you wrote or this. When we answer questions, we get 1 try. You don't get 2.
Well, I thought
Pretty
that
soon,
meant
what are you
the
gonna do
same
next?
thing.
Like go this or that? Yeah, okay, it's 1 of the 3. Great, wonderful.
But I thought it meant the same thing.
Oh, no, slopes are always fractions. The other thing is a coordinate.
Oh,
Big difference. All right, so next up says 1, 3, and 4, 2. And I'll do this one in blue. 1, 3, and 4, 2. So, you know what, in case you had a problem, Stephen, on your quiz, I'm just gonna pause for a second. Can everybody find 1, 3 on the bottom graph and just make sure that your point is plotted for 1, 3? Right, that you're on 1, 3. Let's make sure we remember how to plot points. All right, so here's 1, 3. It's right here. Ready? 1, 3. There it is. Next, can you find the point 4, 2? Find where x is 4 and where y is 2. Here's where x is 4 here's where y is 2, so here's my point, 4, 2. Now I draw the line connecting them. So now the last part is, how do I move slope, to go from the point on the left to the point on the right? Now the first thing is, am I going up or downhill?
Down.
Down. So what kind of slope is it?
Negative.
Negative. Now, what over what? How many do I go down? How many do I go over? Mr. Tello, down how many?
1,
Good. Derek, over how many?
3.
Good. Negative 1/3 is the right answer. Okay? Now, you know, I come back to this example over and over and over again, and I really don't want to sound boring, because I hate, if I'm a kid, I hate when a teacher's boring. But in all honesty, if I was to put a $100 gift card on your desk and say, if you learn this by tomorrow, that $100 gift card is yours, how many people would know this stuff? The whole class would know this stuff. This is not hard. All right? So the question really comes down to, not are you smart enough to do this? The question is, are you motivated enough to do this? That's the question. And I would say to you, we watched a video on the very first day of class called Be Phenomenal. And there's a line in that movie which I absolutely love, and I had to learn this as a coach. I used to think as a coach that when I first started coaching in Patchogue, Medford, I coached a wrestling team at Saxton, and we won like our first 5 meets in a row. We beat everybody. And our 6th meet was against Brentwood South. Now, one of the best middle school coaches I've ever seen, the 2 best middle school coaches I ever competed against, well, there were 3. Joe Patrovich, who became a varsity coach, who was a legend. Warren Duncan, who was a fantastic coach at Brentwood South, and Mr. DeFici. So I'm sure a lot of you guys know Mr. DeFici. He's a very good friend of mine, and he's a gym teacher at Bay. And he is a great wrestling coach. He is not a good wrestling coach. He is 3 great ones: Patrovich, Warren Walker, and Bob DeFici. Those are the 3 great ones.
I know all that.
So now, Warren Walker was the coach at Brentwood South. Now, Mr. DeFici coached the Oregon Middle School. Oregon wrestled Brentwood South before we did, and Oregon got beat by Brentwood South. So then I asked Coach DeFici, you know, what were they like? And he says, oh, they're really, really good. They ran a half and wrist on us. And then I was talking to Coach Kowski, who was the varsity coach and was the best varsity coach I'd ever been around. And he said that if he was preparing to wrestle Warren Walker, that he would make sure that his kids could counter cradles, because they're going to cradle you to the left and cradle you to the right. Now, this was my first year ever coaching or teaching. And I truly thought that if I just psyched my team up enough, that through pure psych up, that we could beat anybody. So at the time I coached at Saxton, and if you've ever been in Saxton, there's like a basement under the gym, and your voice kind of echoes down there. And I would get the team ready before the match, and I would start working them up to a froth, like screaming and hollering and getting them rocking and getting them ready to go. And then we would charge out into the gym, and again, we had won our first 5 matches in a row, and I thought the biggest reason we won is because I gave the greatest psych-up speeches. So then we go to wrestle Brentwood South. And I remember they walked into the gym, and it was on St. Patty's Day in 1986. I know that because Warren Walker wore a bright green suit. Every kid on the Brentwood South wrestling team, now Brentwood South is a nasty neighborhood. Every kid on that wrestling team wore a suit and tie. They all walked into the gym. When Warren Walker stood, they stood. When he sat, they sat. They never said a word the whole time. We lost 61-3. We got annihilated, blown out.
Oh, my.
Yes, oh yes. Now, I thought that getting psyched up meant that you were going to win. And what I learned on that day is, if you don't prepare, you don't win. It's as simple as that. So, over the next year, I prepared better, and we lost very close. We lost like 33-30. And the year after that, I beat them. And the year after that, I beat them again. And the coach of their team, Warren Walker, who didn't like anybody, he didn't like Mr. DeFici at all, because DeFici was very good, and they butted heads because they were both so good. They respected each other. They didn't like each other. He actually began to like me, and he would come here and drill and practice in our wrestling room with us and teach us his tricks of the trade. He was just a fantastic coach. I also knew some friends of his from way back when. So anyway, I learned it's about the preparation. It's not about screaming and hollering. It's not about saying you're going to be good. It's not about saying you're going to win. It's about preparing to win. So if you want to be successful, what you're going to do, Ethan, is you're going to make it a point between now and tomorrow to look this quiz over. Maybe to go on the internet tonight and watch the video of how you do those questions again. If you do that, you're going to be successful. You're going to, if you will, earn your future. In that movie, Be Phenomenal, they said a fantastic line. It said, greatness is a few simple things done right over and over and over again. And that's how I beat Brentwood South. We learned how to stop their moves. We practiced them every day, a little bit every day, and we did it over and over and over again. Greatness is simple things, little things, done right over and over and over again. So if you want to be great, don't think you're born great. You work great. You become great through your effort and the way you go about your business. All right, so we've covered our slopes. We know everything we need to know about slopes. Now, let's get on with today's lesson. And we start with a really confusing diagram. And a few years ago, when the state switched over to the Common Core, they actually gave this diagram as one of a handful of sample questions for the entire course. So ever since they gave us this diagram, we've been practicing it each year. And it actually teaches very, very well, but it's a very hard diagram. If anybody got this right, you really need to pat yourself on the back, because this is a very difficult and challenging question. And it takes into account the idea of slopes without a graph to do it on. Now, this is proportional. This small triangle here is growing up to, if you will, the big triangle here. And the ratios, which slope is a ratio, are going to maintain or be constant. Now, this point is 0, 2. This point is 0, 8. Do you see how it stays like on the x-axis at 0? Right? But if I go from 2 to 6, how long is this side? 2 to 8, I'm sorry. If I go from 2 to 8, how long is that side? 2 to 8. 2 to 8. 6. Right? Because 2 plus 6 more places lands me at what? 8. Okay. Now, on the blue guy, I'm going from 2 to 11. How high did I go there? 9. Not 10, 9. Good. On the other side, we want to figure out x. How far did I go from here to here if I went from 0, 11 to 6, 11? 6, right? From 0 to 6. And then on the red one, I went from 0, 8 to x 8. So how far did I go? X. I don't know how far I went. But what I can say is that the ratio, if you will, of this slope to this slope, the change in y, 6 is to x, has to be equal to this slope here, because the straight lines have the same slope, 9 to 6. Now, does anybody remember what to do when we see something like this? A fraction equals a fraction. Cross multiply. Good. So I'm going to do this times this, 36, equals this times this, 9x. Now it's easy. If I'd have given you just this question, you would have said, oh, that's really easy. What do? Divide by 9. And x is equal to 4. So what this means is that's 4, 8. Very good. This is a very, pat on the back. Very, very, very hard question. Okay? Yeah, well, it's really hard, but you know what? We're going to do it like 4 days. Listen, guys, we're going to do this question 4 days, at least 3 days in a row. And I think 4 days in a row. Okay. All right. Now, listen, guys. Hey, what are we doing here? You're asking him for what? You can go. Well, he doesn't have to be involved in that. Now, 3 ways to look at slope. Rise over run, or the way we looked at it before. What letter goes in the top? Change in y. The up or down goes first. Remember, y is up and down. Over change in x. Or this one at the end, which we will use a lot in the coming days, but not quite yet. Here's 2 questions like the questions on the quiz. Figure out the slopes. Go ahead. Okay, so I look at my top line, here's a point, here's a point. Tell me, am I going up or down?
Down.
Down, so what's the slope gonna be?
Negative.
Negative. And then how many do I go down and how many do I go over? Everybody?
Down one.
Down 1 over
Two.
2. Good. Now let's take a look at this guy. I'm going from this point to this point. Here we go. I go up how many? Well, first off, is it positive or negative?
Positive.
Positive. That's just my fraction line. That's not a negative symbol. And how many do I go up? How many do I go over?
Up one.
1 over 1. You could have said 2 over 2. It's the same exact thing. So you will get 2 lines like that in front of your quiz tomorrow. Hopefully everybody gets 100 on it. I do think it's pretty easy. Okay, next. What about that formula we were just talking about? What's the matter?
Whoa.
Just a 1, that's fine.
One,
Yeah,
alright.
that's good. Now, the advantage to this formula, the last formula we put up there was this. M equals, or slope equals, y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Now, here's the thing. If we're gonna always draw the picture, it requires, first off, that you put the points in the right place. Ethan, you're distracted today, bud. It requires the points go in the right place, and it also requires that you draw a graph every time. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes drawing a graph can be a pain in the butt. So, is it possible to do the slope without a graph? The answer is yes. This formula is, I think, the best formula to use to do that. Now, first off, when kids look at this for the first time, they get spooked. It's kind of like seeing a vampire. Bah! Slope is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 x sub 2. What is that? What is, I don't know, I don't get it. Really, really simple. All this means is the y from the second point minus, Spencer, the y from the first point, Rach, over the x from the second point minus the x from the first point. Now, I don't care what the first point and the second point are. It makes no difference. It always works out correct either way. I'm going to let this one be the first point and this one be the second point. So now, let's plug in the parts. What's the y in the second point?
5,
No, the y.
10.
10. Minus, what's the y in the first point? 5. What's the x in the second point? 5. What's the x in the first point? 3. And by the way, Mr. Friend has a good way of doing this. He says, set it up like this, put your minuses in there ahead of time. So for a lot of kids, that helps. Now, what's 10 minus 5? 5. And what's 5 minus 3?
2.
2. That's my answer. 5
Whoa,
over 2.
magic.
So all you have to do is remember the formula, and I think they actually give it to you on the state test. And then plug in the correct things. Yes?
If there's a graph, but we know how to do it at the graph, can we just do it?
You could conceivably do that, okay? Now, but I want you to know this way too. It's important. All right, find the slope of that line. All right, here it over. We now know how to find the slope each and every single way. Be ready for that quiz tomorrow. Hasta la vista. Vaya con Dios. Toodaloo. Ta-ta. Arrivederci. Smile a lot. Ciao. Arrivederci. Adios, amigos.